Gotcha. Perfect. Okay, so just again tonight, if you're into the tweeting thing, we can tweet hashtag Ontario Learns, Apprentissage Ontario, Deltech. You can at Deltech, at AL Learn, and if you really feel like it, you can tag myself too on Twitter at AgawaP. Yeah, and then if you want to reach out after this facilitation, please do. If I mention a resource and I just didn't happen to put it in the chat, just ask a quick question. And I'll respond, but I'll also add it on my Twitter handle because sometimes someone else probably has the same question. Okay, sorry, I'm still trying to catch my breath from the practice. Okay. So, I want to bring us back to think about the land that you're on this evening. And I want you to think about where you are, joining us from virtually, and maybe add that to the chat. I'm still in Mount Albert. I can't believe actually all 3 sessions I spoke to you from the same spot because I've been all over the place down here with hockey lately, but happy to come from you from the huge metropolis of Mount Albert. Closest local community is Georgina Island First Nation, home of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat. Definitely a lot of folks have moved through the territory and still have a presence here today. We have visitors who are Inuit, Métis, and sometimes an intersection of all of them. We want to be mindful that we are visitors on this land, and we want to leave the land just as we found it. And I think about, braiding sweetgrass. There's a really great quote that the strawberries taught us everything we need to know about relationships and reciprocity. So want us to humanize our environment. I think we treat it as a commodity, and but they are part of who we are, and they can survive without us, but we certainly cannot survive without them. So thinking about enhancing and building that relationship with our environment, and how are we protecting her and ensuring that the next 7 generations have what we have access to at this point. Okay. So we have a few names I didn't see before. So if you can, drop it in the chat. Where are you? Who are you? And where are you calling in from today? And I'm going to let Rochelle in. This session is being brought to you this evening by OECM in partnership with Dell Technologies and ALP Advanced Learning Partnerships. OECM is a trusted not-for-profit collaborative sourcing partner for Ontario's educator sector, broader public sector, and other not-for-profit organizations. They contract with innovative, reputable suppliers to offer a comprehensive choice of quality products and services, and generate a significant savings for our customers. Designed in consultation with Ontario educators, this is one of the many offerings that have been curated and selected to support educators in pursuit of 3 ministry goals: achieving excellence, social and emotional learning, and equity and inclusion. And, I wouldn't be me if I didn't tell you, if you didn't sign up for Kalinda's sessions yet, do it. They're going to be so good. Always got to plug the Anishinaabe sister. When we look at advanced learning partnerships, together we perpetuate trust, together we cherish the value of people, together we realize opportunity, and together we serve in gratitude. And those are our core values. We will be recording this session, and it will be available to you at a later time via link that will be posted. And you'll be able to access this for future use if needed. Just a reminder, it'd be great if I could see you. I know this is a tough time. Some of you probably rushed home and are eating dinner. I'm going to eat mine when I'm done because I have to talk. Otherwise, I probably would be eating with you. Please mute your mic, but please also use the chat. You can private message me if you have a question or you missed something that I said. And you can use the emojis to stay engaged. We're going to probably use our breakout room feature quite a bit tonight to kind of close off some things. So you will have a lot of collaborative time and chat time. So session 3, I want to go over the 5 principles of equity literacy because we talked about those detours last week. I want us to start thinking about how does that apply to Indigenous education. I want to revisit the inquiry prompts that we kind of built on our first night together. I want to move to a space where we are developing inquiry questions and want to work through identifying strong inquiry questions and digging deeper into the learning using that questioning cue chart. Katina, did you want to add anything? You're muted.
That's like the phrase of the century, right? You're muted. Pardon me for that. Welcome, everybody. Hi, Katina from One Dish, One Spoon area. So tonight we will be doing prizes at the end. So I'll be putting my little link in there if you want to participate, but really looking forward to this final session that we hope is not final. So please let us know that this is something that you would like to continue in the survey. And that's how we want to maybe, if the stars align and the dates align, that we can continue a session like this at a deeper level. It's what we call a mastermind session. And for those who are interested and committed to participating and then actually taking some of the work we do here, bringing it back to your school, practicing it, and then bringing back to share. So we'd love to have a deeper dive into this and very exciting. So please do let us know if that's something you're interested in doing in the evaluation. So we need to get that data from folks. So thank you, and looking forward to a great night tonight.
Awesome, thank you. All right, I just want to revisit our norms for learning. These are straight from Robin DiAngelo's article around social racial justice. And I do think that I had it in the link below, so we can pop it into challenging the common guidelines in social justice education. So Katina's going to pop it in the chat just so you can have a record of it. One of the things, and I think I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in the first one, but I feel like all the nights are blending in my mind, so I apologize for the repetition. But one exercise that's really good to do it when you're going to be together for a period of time for professional learning with your staff, even at the start of the year. It's neat to put these up in a Google Doc and look at what are some of the barriers that may present themselves if you adopted these norms for learning, and what are some of the opportunities that could be created if you adopted these norms for learning. So these are something to think about. So maybe choose a couple tonight and you're going to push yourself a little bit, especially when we get back into Gorski's article. And yeah. Sorry, I'm like a little spazzy today. And I also want to bring you back to who am I? So everything is grounded in the culturally responsive and relevant pedagogy monograph. You can find that on the Ministry of Education website. I really actually use the monograph a lot because I feel like it is a good sample of progression on how to move through work. We recognize, we should recognize that Indigenous education and equity are not the same thing. With Indigenous education, we want to ensure that we focus on sovereignty and nation-to-nation relationships. However, we have to also understand that equity and Indigenous education are in a relationship with one another. So I always see it as an opportunity to support one another in the work. I frequently teamed up with our equity teams in our school board because I just find that there is a relationship, especially with respect to colonialism, in terms of being able to move the work. And I don't know, there's something about being able to partner beside somebody who understands through the legacies of their ancestral story of the impacts of colonialism on who they are today. So I always, again, a relationship, but two separate lanes walking beside one another through the work. When we talk about who am I want to sit in this for a minute because I see it all the time. If we do not spend the time in understanding who we are in the social identity that we are walking in this world in, the bodies that we move along with, the intersections of our social identities, if we don't understand how that operates within this system that is a colonial construct, we will not go deep with equity work. And the reason why I say that is because you can learn all the vocabulary you'd like in the world, but until you know how to action it, you have to truly understand who you are and how you fit into the system. And if you don't, so, and then it helps you to construct that path, and then you'll come to an understanding of how to dismantle it. But we can't just skip this and move right into the work. It's not sustainable. It doesn't build capacity, and you're going to continue to have roadblocks along the way. So spend that time. There are some really good resources, and I will post them on Twitter later. I'm thinking of a book and it comes with a workbook, but I just don't want to get it wrong. But White Fragility was one of them, and Robin DiAngelo did write a partnering workbook, so you can kind of deconstruct your identity of whiteness, but it's not just for people who are not racialized. I want to be clear. I am learning a lot about model minority myth and understanding that there are things that are constructed so strongly and run deep in our veins that there's some unlearning that needs to happen to in both racialized and non-racialized bodies. So I want to put that at the base of our conversation today. So last week we were talking about and this was because of our first week. So in the very first week, when we went into our breakout rooms, there were a lot of folks talking a bit about how when they engage in Indigenous education in their buildings, they do feel resistance from whether it's their teaching partner, their classroom neighbor, sometimes an administrator. And so how do you move through those pieces? So sometimes I think it's important for us to understand what is that's operating? What is the protecting that's happening, in essence, to get you not to do the work that you want to lead. So, or co-lead, whatever your space is. So we worked through quickly these 4 particular detours, and everyone did some sharing last week. So what I'd like to do tonight is move into the 5 principles of equity literacy. So I wonder if, Katina, if you could just drop the PDF into the chat again, and we're going to continue with the article, because as much as we can surface all the detours and barriers, but I'm a solutions girl. So how do what does that then turn into in terms of constructing change and dismantling colonialism? I mean, that's a big phrase, like it's going to take forever to do that, but these are the 5 principles we're going to look at. There are, so I put them in this link. I want to make sure I did it right. My kids were, yep. Ooh, look at me. The girls were interrupting me. So sometimes I think I did it and I didn't. So I want you to read through the equity principle assigned to your room. So if you're the first room, you'll look at the first principle. You're going to create some Post-its around important ideas, but I want you to think about what are some intentional actions you can take with respect to Indigenous education that will center those principles? So I'm going to push you a little bit. And then I want you to share with the larger group. So if it's easier for you to kind of co-construct the ideas like on yellow tags, and then the pink tags are your actions that you think you can take immediately, then that's amazing. I also want to honor where you're at in your learning. So I want to just say no action is like the best action. You have to think about where you're at in your own learning. What are you prepared to do in your classroom tomorrow? And then maybe what learning do you need to kind of move beyond where you're at in your own understanding and background knowledge. So if we could create, how many people did we have? I just kept hitting the, you know what I'm going to do? Give me 1 sec.
We have 17 in the house. What we could do is 3 rooms of approximately 5. Does that sound okay? Or would you like 4 rooms?
If you did 4, we
Okay.
can put the 5th principle in with the 4th. It's a really short one. So I'm going to just adjust my little link here. Perfect.
Claire, are you okay? I have you to go into room 3. Let me know if you need some support. She may have stepped away. Oh, there she goes. Okay.
People were grabbing food. They were sending me notes.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. We had a few people who were struggling with.
We are. Of course, we're talking about fry bread.
Oh, don't be mean like that. I'm not gonna cook me fry bread. My auntie won't give me her recipe.
There is no recipe. That's why she's trying to teach you a lesson.
Oh, I know. She won't teach me how to make it either.
Oh, well, that's not fair then.
Yeah, see, exactly. No recipe, no teaching.
Yeah. It's funny because people always ask me, they're like, oh, I want to do this, send me the recipe. And I'm like, there is none. Like, it's about how it feels and how much you move it. And I've done it so many different ways. Fry it sometimes I bake it in a cast iron pan. Sometimes I fry it in the cast iron. It's different all the time.
Isn't it
But
then
dumplings are the same.
isn't that because it's more of a method then than it is a recipe? If it's
Yeah.
open to so much interpretation?
Maybe. I think it's just like one of those things. It's like if your, grandmother had like the best chocolate chip cookie recipe, like mine used to measure it out with teacups. So it never was a perfect measurement. So the flour was measured in teacups. The egg was like measured like in a teaspoon. Like they didn't have the measuring tools that we have now, I think.
There's a great guy on YouTube, Glenn and Friends. I don't know if you ever follow him, but he does this historical cookbook recipe at least once a week. He does 6 episodes a week. And one of them is on historical cookbooks. And that's the thing. He does 200-year-old recipes. And it's like a cup of, but a cup could have been any cup you had in your house. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah, totally like your mom. That's what my grandma did. You had to watch her. And then you sometimes got a bowl and got to model what she was doing. I want to show you something before we talk about what was going on in your rooms. And so one of the conversations in the room that I was in, we talked about what if you presented those detours? And what if people didn't understand what they looked like or sounded like or felt like in a classroom space? So give me one second here.
I'm just going to ask folks to go on mute just so we don't get the feedback.
Yeah, I was just muting them. Perfect. So one of the things, so this is a tool that Kika Oja Thompson, I've done work with her before. She used this once in a session that we were doing, but these are things that are naming those detours. And so how she used it with us was basically, let's look at it and think about, have you said these things? Have you felt these things? Have you thought these things? These are all part of reinforcing that narrative of whiteness. And so I thought this was a good tool to kind of contextualize like what we're talking about. So I'm just sharing this as an example. I know that it's an adaptation from some of D'Angelo's work, but I'm confident that Kika had constructed this in some capacity. So I just want to give credit where credit's due. I'm not trying to, it's just who I am. Anyways, that's where I got it from. But this is like an idea of how to get folks to think about what this looks like, sounds like, and feels like. Okay, so I want to stop share for just a sec. And I'd like to kind of go through each of those principles, if that works. One sec. Sometimes I feel like my share screen's on point, and sometimes I'm a little bit 5 principles. There we go. Okay, I wondered if we could have, and it's my fault room 1 is not that full because we were talking about a lot of things. So we could just maybe have a quick chat from room 1 had the direct confrontation principle, which is why that tool came out, because I thought, well, it's not really confronting. But anyways, maybe somebody from group 1 can kind of share a bit of what we were chatting about. Can we have a member of group 1? Room 1.
All right, I will offer. Anyone else want to go? So much for staying quiet, guys.
Nice try.
Thanks, Sophia. So we had the conversation about like why is it often the racialized individuals within the building that are having those conversations or asking those questions, advocating or pushing for change and equity. And we didn't really come up with an answer, but it was more of the questions and thinking and sharing of that we had. So something that we noted down, I think Sophia said this one, was when thinking about directly confronting racism is how can we identify it if we can't even define it? So she was, kind of making reference to within her school, talking about the isms and stuff, but do they really understand what anti-Indigenous racism is, or Black racism? So do they really understand that in order to take the next steps to impact or create the impact or focus on what could be the change within their classroom? I made a comment around saying that it's a system issue. So a lot of conversations I've had saying that, like the emphasis or the pressure is on what are you doing in the classroom, or how are you approaching the various expectations or the conversations, and all these pedagogies come down from the ministry level or board level, but it also almost has to be the upside down of that hierarchy, is that it has to start from the system up, addressing it, noticing it, who is at the top of that ladder, and is it equitable in order for it to come back? Is there representation? Is there advocacy in not just I think Pamela, you said a thing is the tokenism, right? So it's going away from that tokenism and actually impacting and doing something about it. So that was a question we had, is how do you confront when it's starting from the top? Did I miss anything, ladies?
I feel like you're the official spokesperson for group 1. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move to room 2. We had the redistribution principle. Ooh, look at you. All right, who from group 2 wants to share?
We're doing a partnership sharing today. I think Nicole's going to start us off, I believe.
Okay, which color am I doing? I can't remember.
You're doing the important ideas, or just a sort of a short summary of that principle.
Okay.
And you can add on to any, so that was yellow, and then you can add on to any blues as well.
Okay. So just the summary of the redistribution principle is we cannot allow racism infused misperceptions of cultures to justify our failure to create racially just schools. School and board policies around suspensions and dress codes and lateness need to be rethought, and due to like cultural practices. I know in a meeting today, one of the women in our meeting was saying that as a Mohawk woman, they have a mourning and like funeral process that takes 10 days. So having to explain that her child wasn't actually absent from school, but taking part in a cultural and family event shouldn't be affecting his his attendance at school. Equity includes non-material things, ways to allow the redistribution principle that one of the people in our group said their board has brought in was they have a Chromebook for every child, but that it didn't deal with the limited access to the internet for those with different economic placement. The importance of inclusive and less restrictive dress codes.
Nicole, I think you did a great job. Just to add on to what Nicole said, we were we started kind of digging deep into what that may actually, what that might look like in our schools and classrooms, and also in the broader sense, the board. So really looking at the institutional level and how that kind of trickles down into board policies and school practices and expectations and classroom sort of expectations. And I think Nicole did a great job talking about the dress code, the late practices that may happen, access to materials, not just print resources, but also, as the pandemic had shown us, sort of the access to the technology and the internet, even in an urban setting, let alone rural setting, but also in the broader sense, the access to basic human rights like water, housing, healthy food. And we had a great discussion about sort of what is termed healthy food according to the Canadian Food Guide. And I believe Nicole brought us to the attention of the Canadian Food Guide that has, I'm not sure what it's titled, but it's more specific to Indigenous access to food that involve hunting and local sort of food, and that we were surprised that that sort of was there, and glad that she brought that to our attention, and as well as sort of the assumptions that are made sometimes about when we think about who's referred to the office for quote unquote behavior, and what how the behavior is viewed. Is it a leadership behavior that's viewed by some students, and is it an oppositional behavior that's viewed when it comes from others? So really kind of drilling down into what these practices look like in the classroom, at the school level, and also at the board level, and who are making these policies, who is not part of that creation, and how does that impact all the way down to the student. Team, if there's anything else, please do join.
I think you rocked it.
And I think I just like so good. And I just want to add and emphasize, like, when students are away because of ceremony, like that's what they're doing when they're honoring the next phase in, that child, that adult, that grandparent, that auntie's life. They are granted that time. And if we get caught up in like, oh my goodness, they're missing all this curriculum, we all know that that's like, they can whatever, like we know what's more important. We've never prioritized them, like Indigenous kids, parents, families, to be celebrating this. That's all part of colonialism. The Indian Act tried to strip all of that away. We want to not perpetuate those aspects, right? And we want to make sure we give them space. And if the ceremony is 10 days, for us, the fire typically burns anywhere from 3 to 5 days. If they're called to tend to that fire, they are not coming to school. If there's a ceremony that they can participate with other Indigenous youth across the system, and they're going to be away from 3 days, your math curriculum can wait. Sorry, I'm a math major, it can wait. So we want to make sure we're prioritizing the things that make them whole and the things that celebrate their humanness, because I really struggle when we're still fighting to have our own ceremony times recognized, when all of the other folks, especially in York, I'm just using it as an example because it's the one that I know, have significant faith days. We have diamond days where you can't have tests, but we are still having Indigenous staff fight for any of those days. Oh, you can have it off, but it's going to come off your bucket days. Well, it doesn't work that way for everybody else. So we need to move to a place of honoring the first peoples on these lands just as much as we honor our arrivals, our settlers, and all other faith groups that are here that came after us. So definitely something to think about. So if you're an administrator, advocate hard and kind of dispel those pieces. And if you're a colleague, gently share your viewpoint and the importance of knowing who they are first. Otherwise, they're perpetuating colonialism. Bottom line, right? All right. Room 3, prioritization principle.
Hi, I think I was sitting in this room with Maureen and Rochelle, and we had some really good discussions about assessment practices and really reflecting on our current assessment practices and how are our current assessment practices honoring the lived experiences of our students? How are they lifting up and building and telling us the skills that these students have based on those lived experiences? How are we honoring voice and choice in the assessment practice? How are students self-assessing? How are we allowing those opportunities, especially for students of color, to have those opportunities to do some reflection and self-assessment? We were talking about these like programs that we're being told, you know, you must use this program to assess your students in reading or writing or math or phonics development in the early years or sound skills development. And why is it that we're being told that these have to be used for all students in our class? Where is opportunities for educators to really reflect on those assessment practices and use what they feel is best for their students? And it could be different. And also, how do we know what is a good assessment for the learners in my class? How do we know when that was a big question that we had? How do we know that? So these are just like big reflections that we had. We didn't have any answers. We talked a lot about the part in the article about equality and equity, and that certainly stands out to all of us. I'm currently an online teacher, and that piece about equality versus equity is huge, huge. Equity and access for students who are not physically in the building. Team, if there's anybody else.
Awesome. You made me think of, so one of the books that we're reading just as a little group at the ministry is Street Data. And there was a whole, I actually tweeted it out earlier today, and it was in the prologue. And I always love this stuff, right? You know, when we're thinking about, here we go. Street Data is asset-based, building on the tenets of culturally responsive education by helping educators look for what's right in our students, right? Schools and communities, instead of seeking out what's wrong. And then it offers us a new way to think about, gather, and make meaning of data. It calls for what Paulo Freire deemed a pedagogy of liberation. Like, I love that. So when you talk about policies and practices and how should they be filtered, like that's how I see it. How do we create them as liberation policies and practices? Okay, I think we have one more. Room 4, double down on equity ideology principle and fix injustice, not kids, which speaks to that quote. So can we have someone from room 4?
Hi, it's Mel. So again, some of the main ideas is one we talked about is we need to understand the why before we can discuss how. And we need to understand why racism is happening and understand how it operates, who benefits, who doesn't, before we can act on it. Just like we said, I think the last time we said we can't act on a problem that we don't admit exists. So we really need to understand the underpinnings of how this operates in our society, who benefits, who does not, before we can make that change. And again, when we talk about effective equity efforts focus on eliminating racist conditions, we don't need to fix our students. We need to fix the system. We need to fix the way that we do things. And part of that, how to move forward, is one, and I know this is something I've done quite a bit over the last 2 years, is, you know, every educator needs to do a self-examination of their own social location and what impact that has on teaching and learning practices. Because I can speak as unfortunately, I say I'm 29, but I'm not, I'm more middle-aged. As a middle-aged white woman, I can honestly say that
my own social vocation has impacted. And I can honestly say, even though I think I've loved every child in my classroom, I treated them as they were white, and that was disregarding their own identity, their own culture. I treated them the way that I was brought up, and that's not the way I should have done that. You know, too bad I can't go back 2 years ago when I was 27, right? But never mind, moving forward. And again, really knowing our learners, learning from them, like I should have asked more questions, being their partner and really listening. Don't determine, don't make assumptions. We often assume things before asking why something's happening. We need to unpack and unlearn whether they're intentional or unintentional biases. We have a lot of unintentional biases, and really, you know, the last 2 years have taught me this. We need to reflect on our curriculum using a trauma-informed stance. Like, what are we teaching and why are we teaching it that way? Whose voice is present and whose voice is missing? And how do our practices need to evolve from there? A big part for me is using historical and culturally responsive literacy. Dr. Goldie Muhammad, I love her quote where she says, she's never met an unmotivated student, but certainly has encountered unmotivating curriculum. There's genius in every single one of our children in front of us. It's up for us to uncover that before we before we let their behavior cloud our judgment and not dig deeper. And again, really, how do we teach our students as well to think intentionally, to think critically, and use that critical literacy, and not just trust everything they read on the Twitter, or I guess they don't use Twitter, they use Instagram and TikTok, right? But yes, I think that covers it quite a bit. If there's anything else from my group we wanted to add, please go ahead.
You did a great job. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm just, you made me think of something. Let's see how good and fast I can find it. So this is unbelievable, but it's already 8:04. And I hope that I have modeled for you how inquiry can take us on a path that we don't always think that it can, right? So really, that's what happened here. So I just want to quickly show you a couple things. So this is what happens. There was something surfaced in that first day that I was like, we need to go here right now. So I took you on this journey instead. However, let's pretend we had time, right? So if you were doing this in the classroom and you had the image as your prompt and the students were kind of putting some wonderings around it in their post-it notes, what you would do is you would group all those post-its as common themes. And then you would have the students co-construct a question based on those common themes that they're seeing, and then the wonderings that they identified through their statements or their questions that they posted. And then you would have them work alongside the questioning grid and have them co-construct questions. And your goal is to have them live in the analytical application synthesis parts. And that's where you kind of help massage the question to let them take it deeper, and then maybe compile a couple resources, but then you can have them kind of find some on their own. So one that we've done a lot with is, if you've ever seen the Lego kits that they have, that they construct the treaty belt. So we had started with that once and taken them through an iteration where they had constructed it. They had identified the images that they saw. They kind of made some assumptions about the images, and then we had given them some links of reputable resources that would take them through that particular treaty, and then they gathered some information and then shared back what they learned. I find I love inquiry because I don't have to know anything anymore. I think it's exhausting to know everything, to be honest. And as I'm getting older, I'm learning that my brain is running out of room for remembering. But when we do it through inquiry, kids retain information so much better, and they just hold on to it and they keep building on that learning as they move through. So that would have been the process that we started on like 3 weeks ago that I would have taken you through. But like I said, something came up. I felt like this was maybe a bit more of a priority for what we needed in the moment. So I shifted gears. And there's different things. If this was a classroom, there's so many things I can evaluate that. I can evaluate your conversational language. I could have you create like a written piece that could fit the literacy piece, social justice. It fits into so many different areas. So thank you for joining me on the fastest hour that ever was. And then I know Katina has some prizes she's going to draw for. And I just hope you continue on your journey. And, if you ever need anything, you can just at me on Twitter. I'm not on as much as I used to be. I'm laying some boundaries, but as I'm creating space, I'm finding my way back to it. I like it there. So yeah.
Question.
Yep.
For those of us who don't or tweet, whatever it's called.
I don't think you want to call yourself a twit, but go.
Well, there you go. So, but the point being, like, is there a possibility that these resources could be emailed to the people who participated in the program?
Yeah, so the link for the conversations will be there.
Okay.
The resources for the most part were in the chat, so you could have just pulled them from the chat.
I was having trouble with that, actually.
Okay, I can see
I don't
what
know
I
why
can
they're
do.
not opening for me, but like, I mean, I was able to get the PDFs to work today, but like, I can't get the slideshow to open, and things like that. But that's okay. I mean,
sure, I can try to email what I can, because everyone who registered would have input an email address, and I can do a bulk email, I'm sure. If not, I can just ask Katina to help me, and then I can send along the ones that are sendable, if that works for you.
yes, thank you. That would be awesome.
Cool. Katina, did you want to do your draw?
Absolutely. And a great big thank you, miigwech, to you, Pamela, for such a great 3 sessions of learning and unlearning as well for all of us. And as mentioned, folks, if you want more of this and a deeper dive, that masterclass, please do complete the evaluation form so that we can have the data to show that this would be a group that would really like to take this further. So please do let us know if that's something that you would like. So with that, I am going to spin the wheel for all the folks who sent their names in. And
Ashanti just asked for the form again.
Okay, Ashanti.
Yeah.
I'm just going to add your name to the wheel. Okay, so we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10.
Oh, sorry, not for the wheel. The master course that you're talking about, or extending it.
Oh, so
the feedback form.
Tim, can you put
the
link in?
Yeah, I
Did you
think so.
add me to the wheel though, Louis Philippe, or just LP? Because I didn't see the Google form. So sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. So I think I have everybody in there now. Okay, so we're ready. Here we go. You know what? Congratulations to Heather. Congratulations to Clara.
Oh, thank you. I never win anything. Thank you.
Well, tonight's your lucky night.
It is. Thank you.
Congratulations, Roberta.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, LP, lucky you. So
thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah, these are digital gift cards for $20 to Uber Eats. And just looking at this and looking at this group, we were going to do some sort of something for those folks who attended all the courses. So I'm just going to give everybody on here a $20 gift card. So thank you for coming out to these last 3 sessions. So there we go. Yesterday was World Teachers Day, so I did the same thing. So I'm like, of course I'm going to give you guys something too. So I will give everybody who signed up here a card. So you'll get that via email.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much.
Katina.
Thank you for coming out. And please, again, just thank you to Pam and thank you for just the great learning. I'm so enjoying this. It's great.
Thanks for coming and giving me some space. That was awesome.
Amazing. All right,
Thank you.
friends.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Good
so
night.
please,
Night, Bama P.
we will see you another time. Ashanti, if your name was drawn last week, you should have received, and it would come from, not from me, like it comes from a third party. I'm going to send everybody a sample of what it should be like. And sometimes, depending on your district, it gets stuck in your junk mail. So you've got, you know how sometimes like you put the security walls up. So what I'll do is I'll send what you should have received and then go back and check to see if you received it or not.
Okay, because I didn't have anything in my junk mail, but I'm like, oh, I thought it was my name, but I heard, yeah.
Yeah,
So I was
I
unsure.
had you down as a winner, so.
Okay, yeah, I didn't
Awesome.
get anything, so I was, I'm like, let me ask.
So you know what, can you send me an alternate email address? Because what district are you with?
Toronto.